Why criticize? This is something that I've been thinking a lot about, especially lately, as it's been a conversation that I've had with quite a few people. I've had it with people who are critics, who are YouTubers. I also have had this conversation with people who don't like criticism and don't like to be criticized. I believe criticism is very healthy. In fact, I agree with a friend of mine who once said every critique is a gift, whether you like it or not, whether you agree with it or not. It forces us to think about what it is we're doing. Are we correct? Could it be better? And I believe that people who don't like criticism or don't like seeing things they enjoy criticized, well, we'll get to that. But I want to start off with a few quotes which I think are very interesting. There's Aristotle, who said, criticism is something we can avoid easily by saying nothing, doing nothing, and being nothing. And that is to say that whenever you put yourself out there, you're going to be criticized, and that's something that you're just going to have to deal with. The key is, are you going to use that criticism to your advantage? Are you going to listen to what people are saying, because really they're telling you how they're responding to what you do, and use that to do better or to maybe create something specifically for that audience? Or are you going to throw a fit and tell them to be quiet? Tell them that you're just being a downer, you're just trying to tear down things you don't like, ruin everybody's good time? Well, let's jump to another quote, which is Bob Dylan. Don't criticize what you can't understand. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with Bob on this. I think that, criticizing things you don't understand is something to consider when it comes to giving more in-depth criticisms. You can, if it's something that is, say, your art or your craft, and you see people doing it poorly, I think it's a good thing to examine why you think it's that way, and then, give a critique. The critique may not be for the artist, and the artist can choose whether or not they're going to listen to it. But that critique may be helpful for other artists, or it may be helpful for you just to say it out loud, talk about it, and mull it over. Maybe have a discussion with your friends. I think that's a great way to go about it. Now, there's another thing here that is an interesting quote. It's by Emmett Fox, who was a kind of Depression era, I believe he was a spiritual man. I'm not exactly sure what his congregation was, but he was a vocal kind of new thought type person. And he said, criticism is an indirect form of self-boasting. I think this especially applies to a lot of the YouTubers, because there's an interesting phenomena on YouTube, I being one of the YouTubers, where people are criticizing things that they don't think are that good, whether it be how a franchise has gone downhill because it's been taken over by people who aren't as good at telling stories as what started the franchise, or maybe they're taking it in a direction that doesn't line up with the values that inform the decisions of the original characters and storylines of that franchise. And yes, this is a very important aspect of storytelling. I think all good stories are coming from a place of some form of values. Now, everyone has different values, but if you decide on what your values are for your storytelling, or you yourself personally as a storyteller, that informs the rest of the storytelling. So George Lucas, for example, with Star Wars, was coming from a certain set of values. The people who are doing the new Disney Star Wars have a different set of values, and the audiences showing up feel that. So they're criticizing that, and the YouTubers are criticizing, whether it be movies or comic books or whatever industry they're in. I think a big gripe is that the quality has gone down, and the values are different, and the audiences are feeling that, and that's why the sales are going downhill, and people are unhappy. And people who care about these stories, they respond, and then they're mocked, and they go, "Why are you mocking me? I'm telling you that I'm unhappy with this, and this is why I'm not buying it." So the YouTubers come in, and yeah, they are boasting, because what they're boasting is, we see this. They're talking to the audience. We understand this. We understand why you're unhappy. We are understanding why you don't want to buy this anymore, and why you feel dejected, why you feel like the rug was pulled out from under you as a fan of that story, as someone who wanted to continue to engage with that story. And they're saying now, and it's a boast, but I think it's a perfectly valid boast. There's nothing wrong with it. We're going to create something better. So now you have these YouTubers who are creating their own comics, their own movies, and they're engaging their audience daily. And they are being critical, but they're also being critical in a way where they are saying, yeah, we're going to provide you with what you're asking for. And I think that's a very smart thing to do. It's very free market competitive, which I like, because a competition that makes for a better product or a better work of art, better entertainment. So now, on the other hand, there are people who do not like criticism because they want to maintain a certain status quo. If you are enjoying these franchises in the state that they're in at the moment, or you are enjoying the comic books that other people think are not so great, the first thing that you should think about is, well, is this criticism stopping me from reading or watching? No, it's not. Is it stopping you from enjoying it? Only if you let it. If you like it, go ahead and enjoy it. But be aware that you're in the minority, and there is a larger audience out there. And really, the content is, only king if the demand is there. So, if you're one of the few people enjoying a certain thing, then, you just have to be aware that you're voting with your money. But if other people are not, and they're saying why they're not, then that's their right as well. Go ahead and enjoy that. Go ahead and create more content like that if you want to, and then find your audience. That's fine. But to say that the audience doesn't have a right to their criticism, or should just sit down and shut up and buy it, or not buy it and just go without any kind of entertainment of that sort that they want, I think that really comes down to telling people, hey, my opinion is more important than yours. My enjoyment is more important than yours. And it is to such an extent that I can't validate it. I can't convince people that they need to enjoy it like I enjoy it. And therefore, I'm going to tell the voices that are telling me that they don't enjoy it to shut up. And somehow that will make other people enjoy it more. No, that doesn't make sense. Really, what this comes down to is what my image of choice is today. I just saw a breakdown not too long ago of this little cartoon that was called Communist Simpsons, and it was essentially a parody of the Simpsons opening based on their own experience living in communist, I believe it was communist Russia, but there's other communist Eastern European countries. And one of the things about the Communist Simpson was just, the means of production was all kind of brought to one place. There wasn't a free market. There wasn't competition. So there was no need to create a better product. So everybody's house was the same, had the same furniture, had the same architectural layout. The only thing that might be different is that the things in the house might be arranged differently. The couch might be in a different place. The bed might be in a different place, whatever. But the quality of the products was all the same, and it wasn't very good because it was built by people who had to put in minimal effort because there was no need or ability to be competitive. And if you wanted to speak up about that quality, i.e. criticize it, you could get into a lot of trouble. You were silenced. You could be beaten up by the police or arrested, and they were watching you all the time. They were watching you. Other people could report you. Electronic devices in your home could be recording you. You were essentially, for lack of a better word, emasculated to this poor quality. And the people in charge of it continued to produce poor quality, and they had no obligation or need to improve it because they had silenced criticism. This is the value of criticism. Hey, this thing is of poor quality. I would like better quality. And then the ability to shift to something else if you want, that incentivizes other people to create something of better quality. And how do those other people tell you that they're going to create something of better quality? By criticizing their competitors and showing you, I see where they're going wrong, I see why you're unhappy, and I'm going to create something that is better that you will like. And people have a right to demand that, and that creates a superior product, that creates advancements, that creates innovation. And this is the value of criticism. So as an artist, you may not like criticism. I mean, yes, criticism can hurt. I know that every time I put something out, I'm going to get criticized. I get criticized in the comments sometimes. Now, every once in a while, I'll delete a comment because I know it's just someone coming in trying to stir up trouble, and I don't have any use for that. But if it's a legitimate criticism or disagreement with something that I'm saying, I welcome it. I learn from it. Sometimes it hurts. Sometimes you get angry, but you know what? That's how we grow. But to silence people, to tell people that their criticisms have no value, that they have no way of knowing that what product they're receiving is somehow inferior, as if these people have no way of cognitively assessing something and seeing if it pleases them or if it meets their needs or not, and comparing notes with other people so that they can get a better understanding of what their needs are and what pleases them. Those are people who want to put a stop to that, or want to devalue that, or devalue the people who are speaking that way, are really seeking to reassure themselves that something that they are creating that is substandard is worthy. Or it may be that it is not substandard, but it's just not what people want. So, in the instance of comic books, if you're creating superhero stories about, characters having to deal with everyday life and more about their warts and their medical problems and their things like that, and you tell a very well crafted story, that's great, good for you. And if that story makes you happy, I say go and find an audience for it. But if you are trying to create an environment where that's the consensus of the kind of stories that are being told and the audience is rejecting it, then you have to either go and find a smaller audience that accepts it, or you have to accept that it's been rejected no matter how good the quality is. You put a good effort into it, but it's not what people want. And if that goes against the grain of what you want, then again, you can find the audience for that, or you can accept it. But to reject those people's opinions as not having value, or that they don't know what's good and they should shut up and just accept it, well, I think that is cause for more inner reflection than judging those people. And that judgment in itself is a criticism, and you are free to do that. But have at it and see what happens. As for me, again, I welcome criticism. There's a downside to criticism. People argue. People splinter off into different groups, but then those groups within themselves find different things of value. And then when they come back together at times to compare notes, they may have found that they've come up with new and exciting things that none of the other group would have thought of. So it's not entirely a bad thing. Sometimes there's turmoil, sometimes there's conflict because of criticism. We certainly have a lot of that in this day and age. But I don't see it, as a lot of people do, as the degradation of our society or the eroding of our culture. Nothing of the sort. Art has always been reactionary. And part of that reaction is, something as simple as, the Beatles caused people to want to emulate the Beatles, and then after a while people got sick of that, and so you got disco, and then people hated disco, so they created punk, and then punk got synthesizers and it turned into post-punk. But then there were people who didn't like post-punk, and so they created rap, and all these different things come around, and sometimes it goes well and sometimes it goes south. But that's not for us to judge. The judgments that we make are through our own criticisms. Do we like it? Do we not like it? And then we express it. And those expressions lead to reactions, and those reactions lead to progression in our culture. So again, I'm going to defend criticism at any time. If somebody gives you criticism and you don't agree with it or you don't like it, feel free to reject it and keep going the direction you think you want to go, because sometimes as well, people don't see the end game of what you're creating. Criticism might help you along the way, but then again, you may see something that they don't, and the end result will surprise them, and then you can prove that their criticism was wrong, which is also a fun thing to do. So for any artists out there, anybody creating, I hope that helps. Keep your skin thick and your aspirations up. Keep moving along, and don't let those criticisms get you down. But don't ignore them either. Use them. Anyway, I think I've made my point, and we'll be back again for more Mr. Moonlight's Brutally Honest Storytelling Notes. This wasn't really a storytelling note. This is more of just how to respond to stories and how to take responses to your stories. All right. Have a good one, everyone.